Welcome to Positive Perspectives, a podcast dedicated to sharing powerful stories that present opportunities to grow from lived experiences. Each week we speak to expert guests who bring thought-provoking topics, meaningful lessons or stories that spark transformation and deeper understanding. Today I'm joined by Graham Baker, a commercial photographer and the co-founder of Bexley Linkup, a monthly small business networking group open to all businesses across London. Graham has worked in problem management in the corporate environment and also spent 17 years as a police officer. Hi Graham, welcome to Positive Perspectives.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm glad to be here and very pleased to be asked to join you on your podcast today.
Oh, thank you. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're going to be sharing today?
Well, you said it yourself. I'm a commercial photographer. I've been photographing for quite a few years now. 2010, I think I went sort of officially as a photographer, but that was also part-time when I was still in the police. I used to photograph pretty much everything, anything with a heartbeat, I'll take a picture of it, right across all the genres. But over the years, found that working with, in particular, smaller businesses and professionals, but I also work with larger businesses as well. And I found that kind of umbrella of working in a commercial environment kind of suited what I enjoyed the most out of photography. So I used to do all do the occasional wedding and stuff like that, but I don't market for any of that kind of stuff. It's working with small business professionals, big business. It's kind of what I'm about. And today, you've asked me to come on the podcast to talk about some of my experiences and probably my journey of how I became a photographer from a police officer, problem management, all sorts of careers over the past. And so just pleased to be here, and hopefully my story will inspire some people or help some people, more importantly.
Thank you. So your story is really about a journey. So that's a very interesting journey from becoming a police officer and now a photographer as well. So it'd be great to understand a bit more about how you discovered that passion for photography, that creativity that came out through this journey that you've had. So is there a sort of title that you've got for your story?
Yeah, I've written about this subject before, and I've actually been on a couple of podcasts in the past to talk about it, and it took me a while to think of a sort of a title for it. But I guess the journey is about pain. It's about my love for things, so the passion, losing purpose and finding purpose, which I'll talk about shortly. And photography underpinned a lot of that in terms of how I came through the other side, if you like. Pain, passion, purpose, and photography is kind of what we're talking about today, I guess.
Thank you. So it'd be great to hear about your pain, passion, and purpose of photography.
Sure. So I guess you want me to sort of like
Yeah.
tell you a little about it. Let's go back a few years. So I when I first sort of left college and all that kind of stuff, I got into, and I was working for some large corporate organisations, and eventually worked in problem management, which was great. Really enjoyed that to a point, and then I kind of got to a point in my life where I was, you know what, I'm either making people money or saving people money. I wasn't actually doing something that added value to life and all the rest of it. And I had this kind of mad moment. It's a long story, but too long for a podcast. But I ended up not throwing that away, but sort of changing careers, and I ended up joining the police and loved it. It was great. It was a great job. Got to really help people. I know that sounds cliche, but it was just really important to be able to serve, I guess, do something, put back into the community. And it was a great job. It was great fun, and it was a career for life, or so I thought. Moving forward, back in, crikey, how long is it going now? So 2009, 2010, my wife and I lost our second baby, our child, so in childbirth. So our daughter Scarlett was stillborn. She died during the childbirth, and the story goes, it's the usual thing. We had no expectations. It was all the excitement. I got the elbow. Come on, baby's coming. It's the early hours of the morning, so usual, getting everything ready. Drove to the hospital, doing all the final checks, and they couldn't find a heartbeat. And the long and short of it was that she had spun around, and very rare actually cause a double knot in her cord. So when obviously it was time for her to come through, as she's moved down into the birth canal, the knot tightened, and obviously that stopped all the blood flow and oxygen and everything else, and she died. So obviously, or not obviously, but it is the sense that that kind of flips your life right upside down. And we already had our first child, our daughter Sydney, and it's hard to explain the words that kind of you go through, all the emotions, the sort of where I was in shock. I remember quite vividly being told, and the consultant come in and touching my shoulder and saying, "I'm really sorry, but you've lost the baby." And I kind of blanked out. I don't remember very much for a little while, but it was literally just because of shock. The problem being also that we still had to go through the childbirth, and my wife still had to deliver Scarlett, knowing that, and I know it sounds a bit crass and a bit strange, but we weren't going to get the prize at the end of the day. We had to go through all the pain, everything else, but still don't get any. So that happened, and obviously there was, at the time I was a serving police officer, and to be fair, they were actually pretty good. They gave me time off work and they offered counselling, and I kind of just got on with it. And I think the counselling, I don't want to give them a disservice, but a large organisation, it's the whole, right, you've had your 6 sessions, rubber stamp, okay, now get back to work. And then of course when you're going back to work, you're going back dealing with bottom end of society. Unfortunately, you're dealing with horrible stuff day in, day out. It's very negative. Being a bloke, and now this is where it really gets to the crux of it, I've got to crack on, I've got to be strong. It's that self-imposed stereotype of man up, stiff upper lip. I've got to be strong for everybody else. So that's what I did. I just got on with it. I supported my wife. I was put on this exterior of right, stoic, kind of, right, we need to move forward, we need to I got to get back to work, I've got to do all these things. So because of that, I didn't really deal with it. I didn't really deal with the process of going through the whole bereavement process as such, or properly. And I just didn't know why or how that would affect me longer term, which it does, obviously, because I became very angry at the world. I became very bitter, very loss of empathy for anybody. I'm a police officer. I'm going to deal with victims of crime, and I couldn't care less. And I know that sounds really horrible, but that's what I was going through my head, thinking, I'm listening to this complaint, and all I can think of, you don't know what you're talking about. That's rubbish. There's more important things in life to think about than worrying about your neighbours kicking over your fence or whatever it might have been. And I just think that I was getting angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier. And I guess I wasn't turning into a very nice person, quite bitter, angry, stressed. And this went on for a few years. And life was okay, I guess, but it wasn't on the inside. And then it came to a head a fair few years later. There's no time limit on this stuff. And then one day I just woke up and I just didn't want to get out of bed. I couldn't be bothered to go to work. I did eventually go into work, and I remember it very vividly. I had a job on, and it was one of my jobs, so I investigated it. Gone to court, got a warrant, executed the warrant, and it was actually a very good job in the sense. But I didn't feel a thing. I just did felt completely numb. I just felt I should be excited and happy that I've taken all these drugs off the street. Yet I felt completely numb. And then a few sort of days after that, I just rapidly went downhill and ended up going to the doctors. And then it was a case of what the doctors normally do. There you go, antidepressants. We've signed you off work. You are depressed. You've got sleep issues and all the rest of it. And then it kind of all came to a head. And it's all because of that whole process of not actually dealing with the grief properly, not going through the process, being, oh, I'm the tough man, I can style it out kind of thing, which in reality you can't, or I couldn't. And that was that. I was stuffed. And I don't again, and not another disservice to the police, but once you are labeled as having depression or some form of anxiety problem, all the rest of it, feel that's it, it's over in terms of your career. I'm not saying that is the case, but I'm just saying that's how it would feel. You feel that you've marked yourself down, and that way other people would progress more than you, or you'd get sidelined because, oh, that's Graham because he's this and all that. I'm not saying that is true, but I'm saying that's how I felt. So I was unhappy in the job. Because of what I'd been through, but because I started realizing that my purpose had gone. I'd lost a sense of purpose. And I think that that is where it all changed for me. There were other difficulties in the police. I found that, it's a very, very difficult job. And even more so these days, I have a huge amount of respect for the officers that do it today. I really feel for them. They probably aren't getting the best training that they deserve or need these days. But for me, I was just felt stuck. I was depressed. I was on antidepressants and all the rest of it. And then it all came to a kind of a pivot point when I used to watch the TV series SAS Who Dares Wins. I don't know if you know that TV series. And I followed them on social media, and there was this post about this new charity that was starting up, and it was aimed specifically at men struggling with loss and the mental health issues that can associate with that. And it was about this weekend away, and you sort of like the first impression as a bloke, oh, it's going to be really, really weird. We're going to be like, it's like some weekend retreat, and we're all going to be sitting around in a circle talking about. And it wasn't like that, but my wife saw it, and it was about. They just said we're going to go for a hike over Mount Snowdon, and it's just an opportunity to get out in the fresh air, walk with other people that are in similar circumstances. And that was it. You weren't really told much more. And so I went on this weekend, and I have to say I turned around about 3 times, going up the motorway to Wales. And you get off the services, you go around the roundabout, you go across, you're coming back. As you're coming back, I did that 3 times, just because I was fearful of what was going to happen and all the rest of it. But I made it, and you can ask me questions about it in a moment. But in short, that one climb up a mountain with a bunch of blokes, a bunch of geezers, reset my purpose and helped me redefine what my purpose was and what was important to me. Now, alongside all of that, the other stream, if you like, that kept my sanity was photography. I'd always had an interest in photography. I was the annoying person that before the days of mobile phones, I was always the one with the great big little point and shoot camera in my pocket down the pub, taking pictures of my friends. I liked walking and all of those kinds of like hiking and stuff like that. So I always had a camera with me. And I think having the camera, and I bought a new camera as well in anticipation of having Scarlett, thinking, oh, I've got the new camera, I can take pictures of the new baby and all the rest of it. So it took on a new meaning for me, that the camera was ability to just be in my own mind, to take pictures of things that help calm me, and just an interest in photography. And we got involved with another charity at that time, and we met another couple who had lost their baby at the same time, and Amanda and Tony. And Amanda actually happened to be a wedding photographer, and she said, oh, I understand you like photography, you're interested in it as a hobby and stuff. Why don't you come and help me out on a wedding sometime? That lit that little fire as well. So I never meant to leave the police. I never set out to start my own business. It all just grew organically from these two perspectives, one from meeting strong men and the other from this love of photography. And then over the following years, that mixture resulted in me leaving the police, becoming a full-time professional photographer, and running the business to where I am today. Yeah, I guess that's in short, that's probably the story. I've not looked back since, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story and the journey that you've been through. It's quite moving to listen to, where you started and how you've moved through that. And it took time.
There's no time limit on depression or anxiety or loss. And I'm the example of, I buried it, got on with what I needed to do, not realizing it was affecting me in many other ways, that I was coming across as, quite unpleasant, horrible, rude to people. But it was just all this anger, this all bubbling away underneath. But there was no time limit.
Yeah, that sense of men are kind of told to man up and internalize their pain. And it seems as though that's what was happening to you at that time. you were
Sure.
internalizing it and it was coming out in a sort of negative way. So you found nature. You eventually, well done for turning back, turning round, but turning back and going forward. So to climb Mount Snowdon, you said.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
well done for doing that. But it'd be interesting to know, what is it about nature, movement, and open spaces that help to reset your mind and kind of release that stress, release that, or start to unlock, if you like, what was going on with you?
I think at the time I didn't realize what it is, but I just, the more I've learned about it over the few, over the years, is that nature is part of us as human beings. Just because we've lived in cities the last few hundred years, for thousands of years before that, we lived in the wild, we lived outside. We were born to be outside. And I think having that connection with wide open spaces, being on a mountain where it's open space and the wind and all of those elements create a sense of calm for me at the very least, and certainly everybody that I know that has gone through the charity Strongmen, that connection with the outside physical activity, movement. The thought of me sitting in a room with a counselor or a psychotherapist, I just know that I would, at the back of my mind, yes, I know they're trying to help me, but at the back of my mind, I can't be in these four walls. I'm not claustrophobic in that sense,
Mm.
but it just feels unnatural to me. And I think the other side of that, especially with men in particular, and obviously I'm talking from my own experience, is that we're not great at opening up and talking about our emotions. We'll go down the pub and talk about the rugby game, or we don't talk about actually how we're feeling at first. But when you're on a mountain, and this was a key thing that I talk about a lot with people, is that when you're in a room or you're face to face and when you're making eye contact with them, but blokes find that difficult, especially when we're talking about emotional things. But when you're walking up a mountain together, you're looking up, you're looking at the horizon, you're seeing what's above. So the person next to you is doing the same thing. So you're not necessarily making eye contact, but the conversations start, and there's no pressure to talk about anything. It starts off with that. I mean, back then I was close, just under 18 stone. I was a big lump. I was unfit. And the guy next to you's like, come on, a few more steps, one foot in front of the other. And then I would be in front and I'd be saying, come on, let's keep going, we can do this, we can do this. So then it becomes a challenge, but a challenge together.
Mm.
So the camaraderie starts to build. We're in this together, we're going to get to the top of this mountain. It's a metaphor for life, isn't it? It's that we've got this challenge, and yeah, we can climb it on our own, but now we're climbing it with somebody else who gets it,
Yeah.
knows what you've been through, they understand. So it's peer support. And I think for me, I get more from peer support than I ever would from, and I'm not knocking it because I know how valuable it is, counseling and all of those types of services. But for me, it was the peer support that helped me reset. There's a guy called Mark Chocky, his nickname, and we just sort of fell in step with each other on Snowdon, and we were overtaking each other, come on, helping each other, and we got all the way back down the bottom in the end, and that friendship remains. I don't consider him just a friend.
Mm.
He's one of my brothers from Strongmen, and it's I think then when you've got that kind of relationship, when it starts, then the talking becomes easier.
Yeah.
That camaraderie you can. And I remember this very, very quickly, this very little story. It wasn't that first weekend, it was another weekend that I did where I went back to sort of help out. And we were in this pub at the end of the climb, and in the evening, we'd all cleaned up and gone to the pub, and everyone's standing around chatting. And I just started laughing. And are we laughing? I said, well, here we are, right? We're all in the pub. We're all these big burly blokes, and we've all just climbed a mountain, and we're all talking about our emotions. And it would just sound so funny, but it took that to get to that point. And I think that was kind of what strongmen did for me. They helped me reset. I'm not alone. You don't have to do it alone. And subsequently after that first weekend, I started getting fit again. I started talking. I started opening up more about how I was feeling. It helped me make that decision to get out of the police, which was toxic for me, and it changed my life. It was back to the title of the story. It's I found the purpose, and the passion was there because of the photography, and also the passion to help others as well. Now, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, oh, would you see yourself helping and supporting other people through a charity? And I'd go, no, do-gooders, not interested, nothing to do with me. And now I come on podcasts, I talk about it all the time. And I think that, and I find it easier to talk about because in my mind, if even if just one person listens to this
Yeah.
and they think, you know what, that's how I feel. That's how I feel the weight of the world on me and nobody's out there for me. Yeah, there's this whole community, for me anyway, of other blokes that just connect.
Mm.
And yeah, that combined with photography is why where I am today, essentially.
So there was so you spoke a lot around isolation and how being a part of Strong Men connected you with other people, with other men.
Yep,
You were on a journey with them, not necessarily connecting on a level that worked for you. So that's very important. Everyone needs to find something that works for them. And this worked for you so that you would start to talk about your emotions and what was going on
sure.
for you. It's building that relationship, then developing communication, a rapport, trust within the group as well. And
Huge.
because you were saying everybody was on the same similar journeys, there were similar journeys of loss, so that there was a bond there as well that people could kind of bounce around and start to articulate themselves at the
Oh,
time.
definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that there was a lot of fears in going into something like that. And I know again this sounds a little bit superficial to a certain extent, but it's that whole, oh, is my grief worse than their grief? I'm going to sound rubbish because I've only lost this person and this person's lost three children or what, but it's not. That was the misconception. I'm thinking, oh, if I tell my story and then I hear somebody else's story and their story's worse than mine,
yeah.
it was a weird thing, but
Mm,
it didn't exist. It didn't matter.
yeah.
Loss is loss, just because one person had lost his best friend in a military conflict, another had lost a parent, a sibling, a child. It's irrelevant. It's still that same process. It's that sense of loss, and I think that um, that bound up together with that whole look. This isn't woo woo. We're not going to sit around in a circle and hello, I'm Graham and I'm this, and it's not like that. It's blokes being blokes. There is banter. There is comedy and but at the same time anybody that can pick up the phone or go onto the WhatsApp group that we have and just literally say, do you know what, I'm having a bad day, I've got an anniversary coming up, an anniversary of loss, I'm not feeling great, is it, somebody will always go, do you know what, I'm free for a call, have a chat. It's that underlying, and it's all peer support. And I think especially men, I think we tend to well, in my experience, resonate that before think about therapy. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Thank you for that, Graham. So, just to go back to this connection with being creative and how that supported you. So, being behind the camera,
Sure.
focusing on what's in front of the camera, how did that help you manage, say, the stress of it all, or staying grounded?
It's a really good question, and it's also a difficult question because it's emotional. It's very difficult to pinpoint a specific reason, if you like, something tangible. But I think for me, it's the joy that it brings, and not just for me, but for the people that I take photographs for. I used to joke, in one sense that at least when I'm photographing clients compared to the police, the clients don't spit at me when I'm taking their photographs. And I know that's a bit of a crash joke, but there is something in that. It's I'm capturing a memory, I'm capturing a moment, and some of the photographs that I've taken over the years have been really, really meaningful. For example, I work with I don't charge for this, but I do every year for the last few years. I've photographed veterans for the London Taxi Charity, and they look after the military veterans, and they take them over to Normandy, obviously the recent anniversary and stuff, and taking photographs of those people who are, heroes in my mind, and knowing that that photograph is part of the legacy of that person. That photograph will be used by their family, that will be loved and cherished because of the memory that that photograph actually sparks within that person, within that viewer. And I know business photography isn't quite the same thing, but it is, in the sense that you're pressing that button, you're capturing a moment, and that photograph is going to help somebody in some way, whether it's an emotional context or whether it's I'm helping a small business grow, I'm helping a business market their business, and that in turn is helping other people. So I think it's that feeling of a sense of purpose to help others.
Mm.
And as I said earlier, I kind of joked about the fact that, yeah, do-gooders, that's all that old nonsense as far, but that's not true.
Mm.
um and I think the photography gave me that. I still enjoy it, I still love it, even though it's, oh, I'm doing the same sort of job. Oh, it's just a bunch of headshots. It's not a bunch of headshots. I'm meeting these people and listening to their stories, and I'm capturing a moment in time for them. And I think that's a really, really privileged position to have,
Yeah.
to sort of be that. And I think that's part of it. I think it's like it helps people, it supports people, whether it's from a business perspective or an emotional perspective. And I get a lot from that. And I think because it's an entity, it is a business, it is a thing, I take a great deal of comfort that out of a really awful period of my life, something really positive's come through. So there's a message there in that A, you don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
B, you can come through the darkness, you can come out the other end, and you can find your purpose again. And I think this is mine.
So I can sense that you have been on this journey and you have navigated a lot of emotions and a lot of situations in terms of growing through the pain. When it comes to these emotions, because we manage things, trauma is trauma, but we manage it, however long it might have been or whatever, we manage it. So when there's a sense of, or when you recognize emotions are building up or you're triggered in some way,
Mhm.
how do you respond? What do you do so that it doesn't escalate?
Oh, that's a very layered question, isn't it? It's there's different ways of answering that. I think from an internal perspective, I think the thing that helps me quite often is actual physical activity. And I know, but that's me. So I don't run because I want to run marathons for the hell of it. I don't run because I want to be super fit. I run because I'm outside.
Mm.
It clears my head. I don't run fast. I can go for a long time, but it just it's being outside again. It's that nature, it's the fresh air, it's the, yeah, I live on a main road, but I've got some woods nearby. I'm very lucky. I can run up through there. You're in the trees, you can listen to the sound. Even if I don't want to listen to nature, if I can, I put on a podcast, an audio book or something when I'm running. I don't run for physical fitness, I run for my mind and mental health, mental well-being. Yes, keeping fit is a great byproduct of that. And the same with going to the gym. I never was never a gym person, yet I go regularly to my local gym, and it's not because I want to become Arnold Schwarzenegger and grow big muscles and become a weightlifter or anything like that. I do it for functional fitness. A, because you know, you get to a certain age, you've got to look after yourself. Um, but it's the physical activity for me really helps ground me in terms of that side from an internal perspective. But then I've got this amazing community around me of people that I know that understand what I'm going through.
Mm.
You know, I've got friends that I can go out with, but there's things I can't talk to them about. Not because I'm scared to talk to them about it, but they haven't experienced similar circumstances. Whereas there's people in strongmen I can pick up the phone to and have a chat and literally have no all inhibitions out the window in terms of how I speak to them.
Mm.
That doesn't that's not against my other friends, but they don't necessarily understand some of the things that I've gone through. So again, it's community. It's being able to talk to people, knowing you're not alone, and then finding that thing that helps ground you. For me, it's going for a run. It's going to the gym. Um, Not because I'm a gym bunny.
Thank you for that. The importance of finding what works for you is actually resonating through what you're saying. And
Yeah,
also
100%.
and also it doesn't have to be we kind of label things, don't we? You go to the gym because you do this, you do that and do the other, but it doesn't have to be about labels. It has to be what works for you and what's going to help you grow.
Definitely, and I'd like to add to that that it doesn't have to be physical fitness. I would say being outside is certainly key for myself and a lot of people I know. But even if it's just reading a bit of fiction or just going for a walk around the block, it doesn't have to be a ride, it doesn't have to be at the gym. It's about finding the groove that works for you and finding that, which can be difficult to figure out what it is. But again, when you've got peer support, when you've started those relationships where you can start talking about stuff, you hear what other people are doing and you think, I might try that. I might try reading a certain style of book or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter.
Mm,
You've got to find something though, because if you just sit there and let it stew and internalize it, you'll end up like I did in the police,
mm,
which was bitter and angry because I that allowed me to just kind of this
yeah.
strong men helped me with that, and now I feel that I can do that, knowing full well I have this safety net of brothers from the strong men community around me to support me if I fall or if I trip.
Yeah. So this is a very supportive environment to be in. So with those who are listening who may be struggling with grief or burnout or any sort of chronic stress, what sort of message would you share about finding their purpose or their calm or strength through some sort of adversity?
On finding something that helps you reset your purpose, because grief you do lose a sense of purpose, because someone that you've loved has gone. You've lost that bit of purpose in your life, so you've got to find it, because if you can't find some form of purpose, then you're going to struggle. And I'm not saying that I got to the point where I was going to do anything stupid, but let's just say I didn't want to be here. Whether that's just getting in the car and disappearing off into the ether and never returning is another matter. I know people that have been very close to doing the unthinkable, and you've got to find that thing. And I think the best way with that is to find a community that will support it. Strong men for me. I've been to other charities, and I don't want to give any. I'm not going to say any other charities' names because you might think I'm giving them a disservice. They're all fantastic. All
Yeah.
the charities that support loss and bereavement and all of those kinds of things um, are brilliant. It was just that, and I tried them. I'd been with them. I'd been to this charity. I've been to this support group. I've been to this, and it just didn't sit with me because of that self-talk, that stiff upper lip. I don't need this. I don't need this therapy. I'm strong. I'm tough. I can. But you're not.
Mm,
Yeah. And I think that strength is also being able to show a bit of that vulnerability, and then that is a strength in itself. And then once you realize that, actually you start to realize that you're not alone. There are other people out there that feel the same way as he grows.
Yeah,
Um,
brilliant.
yeah.
Great. So we're coming to the end of our discussion today. Thank you so much for your just openness about this and just the raw sense of what has happened to you. Is there one sort of takeaway that you'd have to for our audience as well today?
It's probably cliche, but then, like all cliches, the reason it's a cliche is probably because there's an element of truth into it, and it's you're not alone.
Mm,
There are there are people that you can talk to. You might feel that I can't talk to my friends, I can't talk to my family about whatever's going around here. And I'm not just talking about grief, I'm talking about any mental wellness struggle that you might be going through. Pick up the phone, talk to someone,
mm,
even if it's you're really frightened. Like I said, I 3 times I came off the motorway to come back home,
mm,
but there was that little voice that said, "No, no, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there."
mm.
Don't be afraid to look vulnerable because it's a strength in itself. And I think that is an important one for blokes, especially because we don't like to look vulnerable. We don't like to look weak.
Yeah,
That's kind of that self imposed stereotype, if you like. But you can be bloody strong and have a cry. It doesn't matter. You can't do it alone.
yeah.
You can try, but it's not going to do you any favors.
Well, thank you, Graham. Thank you for sharing your personal story, stories of pain that you've overcome through discovering a passion and also igniting your purpose as well. And I love that piece about vulnerability is strength. So that's a strong message for our listeners today. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Like I said, if only one person hears it, then it's been worth talking about.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant.